All right, hello everyone. This is Richard Carlton. I'm here at DevCon. Once again, we're
Las Vegas, baby.
Yeah, we're picking the brains of the 360 folks who make some pretty important, critical niche products. And one of the things we want to talk about in this video, and I want to introduce Mr. Jesse Barnum.
Hello.
And the niche product in this video we want to talk about is more like a horizontal critical product, right?
It's a pretty big deal for a lot of people.
Pretty big deal and a lot of customers. And that is syncing between two computers, a phone, an iPad.
Yep. And so, MirrorSync can be used for a lot of different purposes. It can do server-to-server syncs. It can sync with MySQL, Oracle, SQL Server. It doesn't necessarily have to do anything with FileMaker. One of our biggest customers just uses it to sync a 6 million record database between Oracle and MySQL. So it's not tied to FileMaker.
Right.
But it has a lot of, it works very well with FileMaker, and it particularly works really well with FileMaker Go and FileMaker Pro. So what I'm going to be talking about today is client-to-server syncing with MirrorSync.
Okay.
And I've got some stuff I can show off and demo and talk about.
Cool.
But yeah, we can sync just about anything with just about anything else.
And it's not that hard to set up, right?
That's one of the things we take a lot of pride in, is the ease of the setup process.
Okay, cool.
I'm actually going to probably run through that really quickly.
Why don't we go ahead and do that?
Okay. So before I do the setup, what I'll start with is just I'll show you how the sync actually works, and then I'll show you the setup.
Okay, good.
So I've got, this is the contact starter solution that comes from FileMaker. And so I've got 106 records in both of these. And I'm going to start off by just doing a quick sync with no changes. So there's my no change sync. It takes 0.5 seconds. Run that a few times, and you'll see that 0.1 seconds. It's almost always less than a second for a no change sync. So there is kind of a question there of who cares? There's no changes. Why do we care about how long it takes? But actually, that really matters a lot, because from a user perspective, if users think that the sync is going to take them 20 or 30 seconds to do, they're just not going to like to do it.
Wow.
But if they know that the sync is really fast when there's no changes, then it becomes very practical to automate the sync process as part of switching layouts, opening a new record, saving a record, all that kind of stuff, because it's going to happen very, very quickly when there's no changes. And as you'll see, it happens pretty quickly if there are changes as well. So that's the no change sync. Now you'll notice I've got two windows open. My window on the left is this file hosted on FileMaker Server, and I've got everything running here on my own laptop. I've got MirrorSync, FileMaker Server, and FileMaker Pro all running on my laptop.
Okay.
Because I don't have an iPad to demo with here, I'm going to pretend that this is a single user FileMaker file. It's not open as a guest to FileMaker Server.
Okay.
So we're going to pretend that this file on the right is being opened on an iPad or an iPhone or a laptop or a desktop version of FileMaker Pro.
Okay, cool.
So I'm out in the field. I'm gathering some data. I talked to this interesting guy, Richard. So I'm going to create a new record here. I'm going to put in Richard's information. And I'm going to run my sync. So that took a little bit longer than no change sync. That took 1.3 seconds. Added one record to FileMaker Server. Notice that I've got 107 records here now. And I've got 107 records here.
Now, where's your server at? We're in Las Vegas, Nevada. Where's your FileMaker server right now?
It's here on my laptop.
Oh, it is. So you're running pretty local.
This is all running local. The speeds are actually quite similar, even if I wasn't. I can't demo that easily, but I can show you where we can do a demo, and it runs very quickly.
But the idea is on this left database would be a hosted solution, correct? And then our right screen here is a local solution running somewhere else.
Yeah, and actually I probably wouldn't even be running this in FileMaker Pro. Most of our users are using it in FileMaker Go.
And that makes the most sense.
Although it works in both too. We do have people that just use it on a laptop offline with Pro.
We get people who come to us all the time and say, hey, we're going to take the mobile devices out in the desert, right? And so it becomes important to be able to let them take a local copy of the database, because I can tell you from personal experience, most places in the desert, there ain't no internet.
Actually, one of our big MirrorSync customers is an archaeology company, and they are actually literally in the middle of the desert in Egypt searching for the remains of the lost 6th Legion of the Roman army.
For real?
For real. They've sent me pictures of the dig site with people on their iPads taking photos, cataloging latitude and longitude of where they found it, and syncing it all up with MirrorSync.
Wow.
We've hit over 400,000 successful sync operations with MirrorSync since we launched version 2 in December.
Wow.
So there's a lot of people using it.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is a real simple thing. You saw me do that.
Yeah.
One of the first things that people usually ask me about when I talk about syncing is, remember, this is bidirectional syncing. So if I come over here and I add a company name on my server file, it's not in my offline file, but when I sync it, it's going to pick that up and have that in both. So I'm in sync on both. So the question becomes, well, what if I change it in both places?
That's correct.
So what I'm going to do here, before I create a conflict, I'm going to create something that looks like a conflict, but it's not. And you'll understand more in a second. So there's my office phone.
Okay.
Now somebody in the office is changing the same record.
Right.
But they change a different field.
There's no conflict with that. You just want to merge the data.
Right. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to run this sync. And what it didn't treat it as a conflict. It treated it as a merge. And it picked it up from both.
Perfect.
Doing that merge is actually quite difficult under the hood because we're doing a three-way merge with an audit logged version. So we know the last synced version, and we can compare that last synced version because we're also very smart about conflict resolution. And so we need to make sure that we're not stomping all over somebody else's stuff. So that's not a conflict. Now I'm going to change the same field in both. Now I'm going to change this right here.
Okay.
I'm going to change this right here.
And then what happens? That's the million-dollar question.
All right, so let's find out. I'm going to run the sync. Same records are modified both on your local copy and the server for the following table. Sync context, one record. So it's showing me that I can't do this sync until this conflict is resolved.
Okay. Did it do part of the sync already?
If I just cancel right now, then it does nothing. Synchronization was canceled because of conflicts. Close. Everything's still the same here. Everything's still the same there.
Right.
No problem. Let's do it again. And now I'm going to go ahead and hit the resolve button this time.
Okay.
Now it's going to pop open a web interface for me. And that web interface shows me a color-coded thing. I can see I've got one, I'm in the sync contact record. I've got one conflict. It's the mobile number that's in conflict. It's in red to show me that it's conflicting. I click on it, and now I get a color-coded interface showing me exactly which field is in conflict. I can then look at this, and I can say I want this version or I want that version.
Okay.
So I can say, all right, this version is the right one. I could even merge them together. I could even click this edit button, and I can say, you know what?
I'll put data from both.
This is the actual one. They got the area code wrong, but they missed the exchange number or whatever. So I'm going to save changes, so I can actually create an entirely new thing. You can do whatever you need to here to resolve that conflict safely.
But those fields were red, and so you're going to look down the screen to find all the red things and fix the red things.
Yep.
That was our only red thing, so now we're good.
Now we're done. Selections have been saved. Close this window and rerun. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to run my sync again.
So it does the conflict resolution in advance of actually running the sync.
It does the sync, and it stops when it sees that there's a conflict.
Now, what if we had 5 people who had the records, the syncing for them was clean?
They won't have any problem.
But if it gets the 6th person,
they
get omitted and saved for later.
Yes.
So the first 5 people did get a complete a sync.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that's conflict resolution. That's not the only way to do conflict resolution. When I show you the setup, I'm going to show you that we've got some other options of how to resolve conflicts.
Okay, cool.
You may not want your users to do that. Maybe you're worried about them doing it wrong. So I'm going to show you some other choices that you can have, but I'm going to get to that later. What I want to show you now is another fairly difficult thing to do from a sync standpoint, which is deletion tracking.
Okay.
So we've created this new record, and I'm sorry, Richard, but I'm going to delete you now.
Okay.
I'm going to, this is important to note, I'm not running a script here. I'm not going to flag the record. I'm just going to plain old flat normal FileMaker delete record.
Delete it.
Deleting this record, it's completely gone. The reason that I point that out is if you've tried to do some other sync solutions, a lot of times you have to script your deletions, or you need to run with a special privilege set, or you need to just mark that record as deleted without actually deleting it, or there's some magic going on behind the hood when you delete it. But that's not the case here. You're just doing it. This is just a flat out, plain vanilla delete operation. Now I've got 106 records over here, 107 records over here. What's going to happen when I run the sync is MirrorSync is going to run the sync. It's going to see that it's expecting there to be 107 records. It's only going to find 106. It knows that one was deleted. It'll then scan through the primary keys looking for the missing ones, find the missing one, and delete it on the server.
So it will delete on the server?
If you set up bidirectional syncing, it will.
Okay.
You can turn that off if you want to set up one directional syncing.
Okay.
We do support single direction syncing, and you can optionally turn deletion on or off. So I'm going to run this sync now. Took half a second, found that record, deleted on the server, and so now I'm down to 106 records on my server. So there was nothing that I had to do there that was funky or anything like that.
Well, can you show us a setup on this?
Yeah, let's do that. So what I'm going to do, rather than do a brand new setup, which might take 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, we're a little short on time for that.
I'm going to edit an existing one, which I think will take maybe like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Something like that.
At least that'll give people a good feel for how this works.
Yes.
Yeah.
We definitely tell people that they should be able to set up their own sync on their own solution in less than an hour.
For a couple tables? Or
number of tables is not that important, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Because starting point is like 26 tables or whatever.
I've set up starting point, that exact starting point solution in 42 minutes.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So I am going to now edit. So these are all my different sync configurations.
Okay.
And by the way that this is the main MirrorSync admin utility. The way that I get here is that after you install MirrorSync. Okay, so I should step back for a second and talk about where does MirrorSync go.
Yeah, where does MirrorSync live? Yeah.
Yeah. So MirrorSync is a web application that gets installed on any machine that you want. Typically, people will install it on their FileMaker server, but that's not a requirement. I actually have one customer that is running MirrorSync in Virginia, syncing between a database in San Diego and North Carolina. So, and there's actually good reasons for that. It's not as crazy and stupid as it sounds.
Okay.
But yeah, so you can install it literally anywhere, and it'll reach out to the databases wherever they live and sync between them.
Ah, okay.
So most people will install it on their FileMaker server, and that's how I have it installed here.
Okay.
So you install it. When the installer finishes, you're going to click this big blue button, and then that's going to take you to this screen right here.
Sure.
There is nothing to install on the clients. There's no plugins to install. That's we make a lot of plugins, so people naturally assume that MirrorSync is a plugin, that you have to install a plugin.
Right.
That's not correct. All of the client-side stuff is all just done with native FileMaker scripting.
So there's nothing at the client level.
That's right.
Which makes it also work great with Go.
That's right.
Good.
That's correct. We actually use the insert from URL script step extensively to do all of our communication with the server.
Oh, okay.
So now here I am in the administration screen for MirrorSync. I'm going to edit my contacts configuration that I created. MirrorSync is a hub and spoke model, which means that you're going to have one thing, which is the hub, which in our case is FileMaker Server,
okay,
and then you're going to have one or more spokes, which in our case is FileMaker Go.
Okay.
Notice, before I leave the screen, that we've got a lot of options for our hub. We've got Oracle, MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, and any compatible JDBC database. So MirrorSync can sync between all of those things. I'm going to stick, like I said, for now with client server.
Okay.
So, if I was network address translation set up, I could set this separate for internal and external IP addresses.
Okay.
I could set this option if I had two or three machine deployment with my web publishing and my FileMaker server and my MirrorSync all on different boxes from each other. So this is where we're telling it basically where is everything, and then down here is which database and what's my username and password.
Right.
Next screen. This warning right here is coming up because MirrorSync actually does a check to see if it's externally accessible. It's not, because we're here at DevCon with a dynamic IP address.
Yes.
But it'll tell you that at least, so you know beforehand that I'm not going to be able to sync from outside the network.
Okay.
That's fine. I'm going to ignore this warning, but that's what that's telling you.
Okay.
This next screen is telling you to create your sync layouts. For the sync layouts, this is the most time-consuming part of the MirrorSync process, and it's not a lot of time. You need to have 3 fields in every table that you want to sync. You got to have a creation timestamp, which you probably already have, a modification timestamp, which you probably already have, and a primary key, which you probably already have.
Which I definitely have that. Yeah.
So you're pretty much likely to have all of those fields already. They don't have to be named anything special. You don't need to add any fields. You just create one layout per table that you want to sync, and you drop all the fields on it that you want to sync. So if you want to sync, if you want to sync all fields, just drag all the fields onto that layout. You don't need to get rid of anything. You don't need to remove calcs or globals or summaries. We'll automatically skip all those. So that's the part. In starting point, that takes me about 35 minutes. The rest of the setup is the other 7 minutes. So setting up layouts, that takes a little bit of time. I've already done that in this case. If you want to just see what it looks like, here's my ugly sync contacts layout. It's just a flat-out debug layout with everything dropped onto it. Doesn't need to look nice. So I've done that part. Next screen, now I'm telling you about my spoke. I'm syncing FileMaker Pro or Go with the server. I could, again, as I pointed out, sync any of these types of databases with it for a server-to-server sync. You can even set up multiple spokes. For instance, I could set up 3 FileMaker databases to sync with a single MySQL database.
Wow, okay.
I could set up 3 MySQL databases to sync with a single Oracle database.
Okay.
So anything you want there. Then your next thing you need to figure out is, are we going to sync with a copy of the same file that exists on our server? Or are we going to have a separate mobile application file?
Yes, and that comes up sometimes when we build a lightweight mobile app,
Yes.
So.
If you do that, then you take your lightweight mobile app, you stick it on your FileMaker server, and you select this choice, sync with a separate mobile file. And when you do that, you tell us what's your username, what's your password, what's your database name, and we will use that as the mobile file instead of the main file.
Right.
So, when we shipped MirrorSync 1, it only had the option to sync with a copy of the file. So a lot of people still think that that's all that MirrorSync can do. MirrorSync 2 can have a separate mobile file. The table names and field names don't even need to match. In fact, you'll get a kick out of this. At some other demos that I've done, I show integrating FM starting point with the context starter solution that comes with FileMaker. And that's
and they're very different.
That takes a 10 or 15 minute setup process.
Yeah.
Completely different table and field names, built by two completely different people with nothing in common except for the fact that they both manage contacts.
Well, yeah, I mean, one was engineered kind of by us and FileMaker from years ago, and then the other one's engineered by Nick Hunter. Nick Hunter is one of the he's like yourself,
awesome.
One of the top guys in the community. And he's in there building the starter solutions for these guys, and they build them very complex on purpose as technology demonstrators.
Yep.
And so they're very different than Starting Point, for example. And so for you to connect those two,
yeah,
very different mindsets into the two solutions.
I think I show that as a proof of concept to show that there is no restrictions on the fact that your mobile file doesn't need to have anything in common with your server file.
Ah, there you go.
In my case, just for simplicity, I just want to sync with a copy of the same file that I have on my server, as if I was connecting to it as a guest.
Right.
Next thing is, which layouts do I want to sync? So I created that layout. I named it Sync Contact. That's just a convention. I could have named it anything that I wanted.
And I would recommend people, if you're going to try to keep your stuff straight, always name it, number it, or do whatever. So sync underscore with a name is really handy. That way you know that it's specific to sync layouts.
And when you name them all with the same prefix, they're all grouped together, so it's easy to pick them here.
Absolutely.
So that's the layout I'm syncing. And now we get to the most interesting screen in the setup process. This is where you actually need to start making some decisions about your business logic and how you want it to work. So the first thing at the top is an email notification system. You can get email notifications however often you want when the syncs run. So you put in your email address here. Oh, and you know what's funny? You know how we just talked about Cloud Mail and how Cloud Mail, we use the Amazon Simple email sending service? We use the same thing here, which is why you'll notice that unlike FileMaker Server, nothing on this screen is asking you to put in your SMTP server, your username, your password, a port number, or anything like that.
You're using all your own account information to send people emails. That is so smart, because setting up the SMTP settings and things like that.
The biggest part of the FileMaker thing?
We get a lot of tech support questions from people. Hey, I can't make Starting Point send mail. Or we're using the send mail command file. Well, you have to configure that in the preferences. But I don't know what they are. Talk to your IT person.
My ISP blocked that port.
I have no idea how to set this up. And so to abstract that out, I would love to abstract it out in Starting Point, but then they'd see our security codes, right? So because it's unlocked, you have it buried in there, so people can't see that.
Right. So this is using the same technology that underpins Cloud Mail to send that stuff out through the Amazon Simple Email services. So it skips a whole category of setup steps that you would normally need to do.
Yeah.
So, and you can set how often you want to get it. If you only want to be notified when there's a failure, you can do that. You might want to get it more often, every time a sync runs, or maybe if there's warnings, whatever you want.
At least initially during the development, you're going to want to.
You probably want it very often during development, and then once you get that confidence level, then just set it so it's only if there's something wrong.
Now, I got a question. We saw earlier where a sync had a conflict. Is that the same as a failure?
No, a conflict is not considered a failure.
Right.
So you wouldn't.
A failure is like.
A failure would be, for instance, if the user's iPad went to sleep while the sync was running, or if they lost their network connection because they were driving while the sync was running, or something like that. That would be a failure.
Fail. Okay.
Yeah.
Because every time you get a conflict, I don't want to. Well.
A warning. An example of a warning might be, say, a validation error.
Okay.
That you've entered somebody, you forgot to put in their email address, you sync it up to the server, and the server kicks it back with the validation saying this field is required.
Right.
That would be a failure, but it would be a warning.
Right.
Down here, I'm going to come back to this one in just a second, same setting. Down here is where I set our sync direction.
Right.
Notice that this is a double-headed arrow, meaning it's bidirectional. That's the default.
Right. Can you click it?
I can click it. I can change it. So now it's going one way from my hub, which is the server, to the spoke, which is FileMaker Go.
Okay.
I can click it again, and now it's a data collection tool.
Data collection tool, exactly.
Just from FileMaker Go up to server.
Yeah.
In this mode, remember how I was saying that we won't propagate deletions?
Right.
If you set it in this data collection mode, anything you delete on the iPad will not be deleted on the server.
Which is perfect, because we want to collect the data, send it to the server, and then clean out the local capture device.
We'll sync inserts, we'll sync updates, we won't sync deletes.
Okay, great.
I'm going to put it back into bidirectional mode.
Sure.
Now we get to the primary key matching. And ordinarily, I kind of just don't spend much time on this, but I want to go into a little bit more depth because I know people are curious about this.
Sure.
So, MirrorSync, as far as I know, is completely unique in the fact that it supports. I didn't mean that for be a pun, but unique kind of is a pun in this case. MirrorSync is unique in that it will support standard serial numbers as primary keys. It's not a requirement in MirrorSync that you set up UUIDs. A lot of people assume, which is true in almost every other case, that you need to have UUIDs in order to sync. We support both.
Right. Now, of course, this gets into a broader conversation about starting point. I think I need to inject myself here just a bit. Starting point ships with a very simple serial numbering system in it so people can understand it.
Yes.
For example, here at DEF CON yesterday, I had people come up to me who have got 2 months of experience going, whoa, this is blowing my head off. This is amazing stuff, and this is too deep. That's why I don't use UUID initially, because seeing an ID key that is 20 characters long as opposed to 1001.
Right.
Hurts their head.
Yep.
They don't understand that. But if you're going to go into a sync scenario, it's good to upgrade your copy of starting point to use UUIDs, and it's pretty simple to do that. I mean, wouldn't you think that's generally a good idea?
Honestly, if you're using MirrorSync, I would say just do whatever makes you happy. MirrorSync doesn't care at all.
It doesn't care. So when you say it doesn't care, it really doesn't care.
It really does not care. There is no speed disadvantage to either one. It's actually, I would say serial numbers have a slight edge in speed just because they're smaller. So if you're sending a bunch of records that are like join tables, foreign keys, stuff like that, 5 characters versus 36 characters, that's 20% of the size. So yeah, there might be some speed advantage to doing the MirrorSync managed, but we truly don't care which one you do. It treats all the features are the same in both.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, you can completely support both models there. In our case, we're using MirrorSync managed because if I look at the starter solution that came from FileMaker, my primary key is a simple auto serial number.
Okay.
I didn't have to change that to a UUID. I just left it as it is, and I tell MirrorSync that we're doing.
Now, but you can run into a situation where you could have 2 records of 3,000, right? No.
Yeah. Now you're getting into the technical stuff. I had a feeling you would start getting into the weeds there, and that's cool because I like talking about that.
Okay. Well, I don't mind because sometimes I ask the hard questions, and if you can't answer them, then this video should not be happening if you can't answer the hard questions.
That is a hard question, but I think I have a good answer for you.
Good.
All right. So let's just say that you've got records 1 through 100 on your server.
Right, and I go out with a data collection, and we do.
You've got records 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
You've already got records 1, 2, 3, 4, 5
That's
on
correct.
your server. Now you go and sync. So what's MirrorSync going to do about it? In the case, if you have MirrorSync managed, what will happen is MirrorSync will write those 5 records to the server, but it won't write primary keys. So they will get assigned records 101, 102, 103, 104, 105.
It maps them to a different location.
Yes. And so what it'll do is it will then remember that for your particular device, record 2 goes with a record 102 on the server.
Yeah, but it has to keep this straight. Where is it keeping this information straight?
It has its own internal database, which is not FileMaker. It's a high-performance embedded database called HSQL, and it's extremely fast. And so MirrorSync has its own separate metadatabase that will keep track of all the serial numbers on each device.
And that's installed and configured automatically when you install MirrorSync on its server.
That's right. You never see that happen. It's not a separate process. It's actually running as part of the MirrorSync process. So there's no ports that it needs.
Right.
There's nothing like that.
Now,
it's an embedded database.
Now, it's important to note that anytime someone says database, and I have database, and I'm writing data to it, that database needs to be backed up somehow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes and no.
Okay,
yes and no.
Don't back it up, but then you're going to lose your mapping. We just had our example of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're going to get mapped to 101, 102, 103, 104, 105.
Yes.
Then the server explodes, the hard drive dies.
Yes.
Then what happens?
Well, MirrorSync is in a unique situation because it's a sync tool, which means that in most cases you'll probably already have all of your records in both places by definition.
Okay.
Where it might be an issue is if you have some unsynced changes that you haven't gotten to yet and your server exploded.
Okay.
And then in that case, yes, you would want a backup of that internal database to restore. But even if you didn't have the backup, it's not a catastrophic situation because worst case scenario, you would just manually import those records onto the server,
right,
not using MirrorSync, and they would just get assigned the new serial numbers, and then you would get a new fresh offline file.
And I want to apologize to everyone listening because I'm one of the people that I go through life and I think about, I'm not paranoid, but I've had it where drives die. I mean, I've got 20 some odd servers.
It's not a question of if, it's when.
It's when, and sooner or later they're going to blow up in an inopportune time. And frequently I upgrade the drives before they die, just because they run out of room or performance or something. But
well, the worst case scenario in MirrorSync is that if you lose that database, pretty much what your worst case scenario is that you wind up having to just send new offline copies to your users.
New copies.
New copies.
Yeah.
So, and that's not such a bad thing in most situations.
Right.
So I would not put the criticalness of that database as high as your actual FileMaker database for backups. But it can be inconvenient to distribute new copies, so it's not a bad idea to have a backup.
Okay, good.
So continue on the line. So now you've got, it's mapping all those keys back and forth so that it knows that these records on this device go with these other primary keys on your server.
Yeah.
That creates like a little bit of a rabbit hole that you can get deeper and deeper, because what about your foreign keys?
Right.
Your foreign keys on your iPad, if you have related children records, those are all relating to record 5. Now that's record 105.
Right.
So with MirrorSync, as part of the setup process, it reads your foreign keys, it knows all your relationship graph, and it'll rewrite those foreign keys from the iPad to the server and renumber them as it writes them.
Very cool.
And it makes sure it does things in the right order, too. So it'll write your parent records before it writes your children records so that there's no orphans. But then you can get into cascading delete situations. You can get into circular relationships. And so it can do a second pass if necessary.
Okay.
So that if you have a circular path between your things, there's not a clear parent-child relationship. So there's a lot of magic that happens under the hood. But all of this is invisible to the user. It just works.
Awesome.
So that's the whole kind of primary key situation. If you set it on developer managed, that's what you would want to do is if you're using UUIDs. And we call it developer managed because in that case, the developer is entirely responsible for making sure that they don't create conflicting primary keys. We'll take whatever your primary key is on here and we'll write it over there. And if you did the same primary key something over there, that's going to create a conflict and we're not going to try to save you from that. So that's your responsibility. That's why we call these MirrorSync managed and developer managed.
Got it.
Our next thing, I already showed you how the merging thing worked.
Right.
Remember where I changed two different things? If you don't want that behavior, you can turn it off by saying flag this is a conflict.
Okay.
In most cases, you probably do want that, so I'm going to leave that on.
Sure.
Remember I said that there's 4 different options for how we resolve conflicts? The one I showed you was this option, user picks.
Yes.
You saw that pop up saying, do you want to resolve this conflict? And the user themselves resolve the conflict. But we've got some other options too.
Well, I like option 2. I think that would be handy most of the time.
Most of the time, I think option 2 is an excellent choice. If you are not confident in your users to resolve these things properly, option 2 is going to be the most recent change wins. It's important to differentiate this from the most recent sync wins.
Yeah, this is the most recent data. So we talked about 2 phone numbers that get edited.
Yes.
If the person syncs once a week,
Uh-huh.
I edit the phone number on Monday. Bill edits it on Thursday, and he syncs on Friday. The Bill's, because it's the latest change, will survive that. And
Even when you sync later with your version,
Yeah.
MirrorSync will know that even though you're syncing later, Bill made his change later, and it'll keep Bill's version.
That's correct.
Yes. So that's the most recent change wins option. And in that case, nobody ever has to resolve anything. It's just we'll always take the most recent one.
But you have to be confident that people aren't going to hose critical data. So that's
Yes.
So
I'll come back to that on that last option.
Yeah. Okay.
So we've got the hub always wins. So basically this is saying always give priority to whatever's on the server over what's on the people's iPads or iPhones.
Which would make sense if you had a corporate office that had critical back staff, like your office, operations staff, and then you had those little measly salespeople that ran around the field that aren't very important at all, right?
I didn't say that.
And we don't trust them at all, and so therefore, if they put bogus data in and it conflicts, then we punt it.
Yes, so that is an option.
Assuming that that's your attitude. Now, I
think that's probably
that does not represent the attitude and opinion of FileMaker Incorporated, but
this is probably the least used option.
Yeah.
And then you've got this email administrator. So what this is, remember the user picks thing where it popped up saying there's a conflict? If I had this set, what it would have said is there's a conflict, an administrator has been notified, please try your sync again later. So the admin gets an email with the exact same, when they click the link, it takes them to the same web interface that you and I just looked at for resolving that. The administrator can then make the correct decisions. They hit finished, and then the next time the user syncs, it'll apply whatever selections
really cool.
the administrator made.
Very cool.
So you've got a range of choices depending on how much, what your risk management issues are.
Sure.
So those are all the kind of the business issues. I wanted to show you this checkbox up here, same setting for all tables. By default, that's checked. This is not very obvious here because I only have one table, but if I had 20 tables, you would see all 20 of them here, and everything I just showed you can be set separately for each table.
Right.
I could set different sync direction, different primary key options, different conflict resolutions.
Let's talk about this just for a second. It seems to me if you had a copy of Starting Point, the one table that's really unique is preferences. It's like our single record. We probably would want to have different settings for that.
Yep.
Maybe the hub always wins or something like that. But the rest of them would be contacts and accounts. And
I'll give you a good example of where people use this. Let's say that somebody has inspection people that go out and inspect people's homes.
Yes.
There would be certain information that comes from the central office to that person, such as the person's home address, their customer account code, maybe a list of codes of inspection issues that are found. They don't want those inspectors entering new data or modifying data in those. So you would set those to be one way from the hub to the spoke. But then you've got the actual inspection data, and that might be one way from the spoke to the hub. So you can have a combination of reference data, data collection, plus some bidirectional data that goes in both directions, such as appointment information. You could set an appointment on the server. It could go to the person's appointment screen in their iPad. That person might need to adjust their appointment based on a phone call with the customer, and then that could sync back to the server. So you could have all three sync directions in different tables in the solution.
Wow, okay, cool.
I'll set this back to same for now. Now we get to, remember I mentioned those three critical fields that we need, primary key, creation timestamp, modification timestamp. Since we can name them anything, we don't necessarily know what their names are. So in this screen, you'll get one per table, and you just come into this and you tell us what the names of the fields are for your creation timestamps, your modification timestamps. And actually, MirrorSync is smart enough to auto-detect those about 90% of the time. We just have the screen because it's not 100% yet.
Okay.
One thing, this primary key too, I won't spend any time on, but it has to do with compound primary keys. If you use a join table that doesn't have its own ID number, but it just has two foreign keys, that's supported, and you would set foreign key 1 and foreign key 2 here.
Oh, okay.
This write-back value is interesting because it solves a very common problem. Let's say people have invoice numbers or work order numbers or job numbers, things that need to be the same number on both.
That's correct.
You can't use your primary key for that because your primary key, remember, is going to be different. If you're using MirrorSync managed keys, it's going to be different between your server and your iPad. So you really don't want to try to use your primary key as an invoice number.
Right.
What you would do instead is you would pick invoice number as, I don't have this, it's not an invoicing system, so I don't have that. But if this was, I would pick invoice number from this field. What that'll do is it'll make it so that when you create a new invoice on your iPad, the invoice number will start off blank. The first time you sync that record, it'll get inserted onto the server. The server will assign the next unique serial number, and then that will immediately get written back to your iPad.
That's impressive.
As part of that
So
single
that
sync
would be the invoice
operation.
number.
That way, you're guaranteeing that everybody has the same numbers on the iPads and the server, and you're going from
That's
a single
a new
consecutive.
That's in this MirrorSync 2, right? Was that a new feature?
That is new in MirrorSync 2. Yes.
Yeah, because for those of you who don't, I played a lot with MirrorSync 1, and that wasn't there.
There's a
initially.
lot that's new in 2. It's a whole different animal.
Yeah. Now, how's reliability with the product? You've been working really hard to make
it is very good. I cannot say it's 100% because I do tech support, and we have some edge cases. A lot of the times it's weird things like I've got a global repeating container field that's backed by ESS help, or I've got I'm trying to sync 50,000 container fields and I'm running out of memory.
Oh, okay.
So I do tech support. We have cases where people will be on the road, they'll lose network connectivity. And so, but yeah, I mean, like I said, we've got 400,000 over 400,000 successful sync operations since we shipped in December. I'm feeling the reliability is, I get excellent feedback, and especially here at DevCon, it's been really cool because everybody's been walking up to the booth telling me how much they love it and how much they're using it.
Well, so we got the write back, so what else is left? Well, processing, and then now what?
Foreign keys.
Foreign keys.
This is a single table solution, so I have no foreign keys. If I had multiple foreign keys, then it would come up with all of the foreign keys already read from the relationship graph. The only reason we even display it here is so that if you need to, you can add your own additional foreign keys if they aren't on the relationship graph for some reason, which you shouldn't do that, but you could. This is a visual display of the relationship graph based on the FileMaker relationship graph. It's not very interesting because we only have a single table here, but you would see a very familiar looking web of interconnected objects here if we had multiple tables that we were syncing.
Ah, okay.
And
it's a really boring graph the way it was there, yeah.
It was quite boring. We are almost done with our process. We've actually answered all the questions there are to do. The only thing left to do is a single copy and paste operation.
Okay.
So MirrorSync has already written our script for us based on all the data that we've done.
Ah.
The script is totally customized to our solution, and I'll show it to you that in just a second.
So this was almost like a wizard to write a script?
Yes.
Ah.
Yes. So the script is now written. Now I'm going to copy and paste it. Copy. Hit OK.
And then you need Pro Advanced for the paste, right?
You don't. I believe regular FileMaker Pro will copy and paste script steps. It won't copy and paste fields or tables, but it will copy and paste
Yeah, there's
scripts.
a limit in there where what Pro will do in Pro Advanced.
Now, I'm deleting my old demo thing because I've been showing this to you, but this is how I would start off as an empty script. So I would come in here and I would paste all these. And so here is my sync script. And remember I said it was customized?
Yeah.
I'm going to show that to you right now. Notice my field names in here. Home address, company, fax. These are the actual field names from my solution. They've actually been dynamically embedded into that script.
Wow.
So that's the entire MirrorSync customized script that's been pasted into there. The only thing left for us to do is to distribute an offline file to our users and start syncing.
Okay.
So the way I'm gonna trash this file. I don't need it anymore because we're gonna pretend I haven't done that yet.
Okay.
And I want to show you the distribution mechanism for MirrorSync. So now we need to get our offline copies to our user. I'm going to use the download database button to do that. When I do that, it gives me a few different choices. Download is the most obvious one, but it's kind of cool what it does. It uses the FMS admin command line tool to automatically pause the database on the server, create a copy of it, resume it, and download it to you. So super hassle-free way without actually having to close the database to get a copy of it.
Wow.
But what's even cooler is this create link option.
And that's a hypertext link you can put in an email to your employees or whoever?
I can see, you see where I'm going.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to create this link.
And it does the same thing?
Same thing,
Wow.
except it can be triggered remotely.
Wow.
So I'm going to click that. We need to know whether it's a single file or multi-file solution. We do support multi-file solutions completely, but this is a single, so I'm going to do that. And this is telling me it's going to create a link. Now it's going to ask me for my server admin credentials. I have a choice as distributing an empty clone or a full copy of the database. So just because it's more interesting, I'm going to do an empty clone so we can see it sync. So it just created that URL. Put it on my clipboard. If I jump over to Safari and paste that, you can see what that link looks like.
Yeah.
What I would do in real life is I would email this to all of my users.
Yes.
And I would say, click this link to get the thing. This is not guessable. This is a UUID right here. So the only people who are going to be able to use this are the people you choose to send this link to.
Right.
So I
and
do
your
that.
Username and password for the server don't seem to be embedded in there, obviously, anywhere.
They're embedded on the other side of this link. So when
okay.
this link gets to MirrorSync, it's going to remember that and use that for the command line tool to be able to download it.
we don't want to be putting our username and password to our server just for
We're not
everyone
distributing
to
that
see.
to users at all.
There's too many clever salespeople out there that would have access to the server. Then.
So this is a completely opaque token that's just going to trigger that to happen.
An opaque token.
An opaque. Did you like how I threw that in there?
Opaque token. That's new vocabulary. So,
so I'm going to do this. Now, I would normally be on an iPad at this point. I'd click my link. The file would download. It would pop open in Safari saying, do you want to open this with FileMaker Go? I would click that. Since I'm on my laptop, I'm just going to open it here. So here's my offline file. 0 records. I'm going to run the sync. The first time I run it, it asks me for a name just for display purposes in the admin console. It's also going to ask me for my password because it needs to know my password. It's actually going to log in as me when it goes to run this.
Password into the FileMaker file that you're
just
using.
my login password for this file, not admin credentials, not, it'd be my personal user password. I happen to be logging in as the admin, but that's just because
this is the machine username password? What
this is the FileMaker file username.
But then you should ask for the username and password, not just the password.
We already know their username because of what they logged in with. The only reason this is an admin is because this file is set to auto log in with admin.
Got it.
But we don't know what their password is, so we just prompt them for that. So this file has no password, so hit OK. Now we're communicating with MirrorSync.
So if Sally has her own password, then Sally would put her password
Absolutely.
in there. Okay.
Absolutely. So this so while this is running, let me explain what happens here.
Well, it's getting a full snapshot of everything down.
It just downloaded all 106 records in less than 10 seconds.
Now, what we had a second ago, was that a clone, or was that the...
That was an empty clone.
So because we had that option, empty clone versus the full thing.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly. Now, when that just ran, so that was when that sync just ran, it's really important to note that we never actually connected to FileMaker server as a guest. You can't tell that because I'm all doing this on one machine.
Yeah.
So I'm just explaining. What happened there is we did not connect as a guest to FileMaker server at all. We used the insert from URL script step to send a bunch of raw XML data to MirrorSync. MirrorSync then turned around and used the XML web publishing engine to communicate with FileMaker Server, which gave us back our 107 records, which then came back as a result of the insert from URL command into FileMaker. It's a sidestep around that, which means that there is no 5003 port requirement. Everything is just going over port 80 or port 443 if you want to use SSL.
That's big.
Yes. So it's going to work from hotels, it's going to work from business centers, it's going to work from inside highly secured environments. As long as you can get outbound on either port 80 or 443, you'll be able to run this sync.
Excellent.
Yeah, yeah. It also is a big part of why we get a big speed boost, especially for those no-change syncs, because we don't need to connect to FileMaker Server at all to find out that there were no changes. MirrorSync just makes an XML request on our behalf, which finishes instantly and tells us that nothing happened there. That's that.
That's pretty impressive.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very impressive.
So I'm going to run the sync again. This time there's no changes, and we're back to less than a second on our changes.
Back to the end.
So that's kind of the whole round-trip process. We could stop right there, but I want to show you one thing that I think you'll think is kind of cool.
Okay, show me that.
So this is a 106 record database. What I want to show you now is MirrorSync Big. So I've got 10,000 records in this system.
Okay.
It could be 50,000, and actually this would actually play out just exactly the same.
Okay.
So I don't have a button for this. I really should, but I'm going to run my MirrorSync script on here. That 50,000 record database just synced in 0.2 seconds.
Wow.
Because there's an incremental sync. It's just going and saying, is there anything new? No, etc.
Wow.
This is not the way it's going to work if you try to roll this yourself in FileMaker. There's a lot of optimizations in MirrorSync to make it so that the speed is essentially constant regardless of the number of records in your found set.
Wow.
So if I create a few records and sync, three records, 0.3 seconds. Now, here's the kicker, deletions.
Yeah.
I'm going to delete those records I just created. And this is where you would really see a slowdown if you tried to roll this yourself, if you were trying to propagate deletions, because you would have to scan through 10,000 primary keys.
Right.
So we've got some magic juice that I'm not going to go into on this about how we do this very efficiently. But basically, when I run my sync now, we found those 3 records in 2.1 seconds, and in a 10,000 record system, we just found those.
So normally that would take a lot longer to do. I haven't rolled my own sync in probably 15 years. So
I have experimented with an unnamed other sync framework that would take about 2 or 3 hours to do what I just showed you.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there is
MirrorSync is highly scalable, I guess, is the message I'm trying to give.
And it's highly optimized.
Yes.
But but as opposed to being free, you have to pay for it.
Well, that's getting into licensing. I love that segue because MirrorSync is free for a single device. So if all you want to do is have one iPad or one laptop or one iPhone for the boss or for yourself or for a single entrepreneurial company or whatever, there's absolutely nothing to pay for. There's no demo, there's no expiration, there's no feature limitations. Everything that I just showed you.
So one single spoke.
One single spoke.
Off of a
client spoke.
Client spoke, and where the other clients are using the live database. Let's say 80 people are using Pro in the office, and this one person's in the desert.
Yep.
It's free for them.
Yep. Totally free.
Well, you can't make money doing that. How are you going to?
We make money.
I'm an expert at free, and I know how that results in no money.
When you start adding devices, then there's a charge for the devices. So when you add a device, if you buy a single device, it's $95. If you add them in groups of 5, it's $80 per device. Groups of 10 is $60 per device, and it scales down to $50 per device when you get to 40 devices. And we do have an unlimited option. For a flat $4,000, you can have unlimited devices. There's also a secondary charge, which is that it's also free with the assumption that you're just syncing a single FileMaker solution. If you want to sync multiple different solutions, regardless of how many devices there are, there's a charge of $200 per additional FileMaker solution that you're syncing. So if you had 3 solutions you were syncing, the first one would be free, the second one and third one would be $200 each for a total of $400.
Okay.
There's also a cap there, so we have a $1,000 unlimited configuration bundle. So for $5,000, you could have unlimited solutions with unlimited devices, syncing them all with MirrorSync.
There you go. And then so that's your kind of like wide open,
yep.
Unlimited open bar, right?
Yep. There's also different licensing for server to server. That ranges from $1,000 for syncing a single FileMaker server with FileMaker Server $1,300 for FileMaker Server to a SQL database such as MySQL or Oracle, or $1,600 for syncing 2 different SQL databases together.
Okay.
So that's the licensing model in a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, you can start off and play with it pretty much for free.
Totally for free. You can download this immediately, set this whole thing up on your laptop, sync it. If you want to move it to your iPad, you could just you can go into the licensing section in MirrorSync, and you can actually delete that laptop device, which frees up that slot for you to then go and use it on your iPad instead.
Excellent.
So that's the MirrorSync nutshell tutorial.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Jesse.
All right. Thank you very much, Richard.
This is Richard Carlton for learningfilemaker.com, and we'll catch you again sometime.